It's April 25th, 2022. I'm watching 60 Minutes, which I don't normally do, but they had something on from the FBI. And then from the FBI, whose main focus is on China and the however that loops back around in our infrastructure. It then looks at Osama bin Laden, which I don't know anything about. And then it goes into Mayor Eric Adams. Again, I don't really know the difference between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Like, when they speak on them, there's no, like, story. There's no, like, grand text, like, architecture structure. I can't really tell who's from who or what that actually means. What I can say is I'm looking between the Bayside Times, which is the one that now I've been looking within for answers for certain things, and then I found out that they have a second one that's actually in a glyph system that works within the 26 character structure. And they both say they both have some internet adjoinment of some sort of QNS. However, this one called the Courier, which says Northeast Courier with QNS, does not have, it has a volume and a number for reference. It does not have a ledger and a times, where the Bayside Times does. So I don't know what that in journalism or broadcast things are for importance. But as I was going through here, I happened to notice there was this ad for St. Mary's, which is where Maria went. I mentioned this morning about the game of Flinch, a card game that when they took me to Maine for a couple of days that I can't remember, they the school that they said that she went to, which Michael Zapp went to, also completely different type of person. This is apparently their school, whatever. Don't know how that relates. But it says St. Mary's High School. It's in Manhasset, where Alexander was born. And then it says Gales. Now, in Gaelic, that's a little confusing because it's got a bunch of different photos adorned here. So that's whatever. That was found inside this Courier, which was volume 35, number 16, April 22nd to April 28th. Which is interesting. Now, I'm like, all right, I have to think about this. So the FBI guy, he's got apparently a meeting in the morning, non-classified, and then he's got a classified area. I'm like, oh, all right. So I'm like, I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking about apple cobbler and apple turnovers. Those are pastries at Pesto Pasta and Cheese. So bakery items, I'm like pastries, apple cobbler. I was like, but shoes use cobblers, or they did back in the day. Shoes and the railway. Bin Laden was talking about the railway. I listened very intently to learn because I don't really know anything about them. Some of his papers, there's some very interesting threads of reality and tapestry in what they spoke of in his papers that they, whatever, are allowing on the public media for 60 Minutes with Anderson Cooper. The other thing is that Mayor Eric Adams, quote unquote, they asked him something about Mayor Koch. I'm like, now here's the thing. How do you know when to pronounce it Koch and when to pronounce it Coke? Because there's the David Koch brothers foundational something or other, so I've heard. But they spell it exactly the same. Are they trying to distance the city politics from their business? I mean, when is it appropriate to point out that the spelling's exactly the same at Koch, but they pronounce it differently for people that don't pick that up right away? So I'm going to put this on real quick because I thought this was an interesting grab. I'm having a really hard time with my left knee today. KNEE.
Watchdog groups are deeply concerned about some of the mayor's appointments. His deputy mayor,
some of his appointments, listen to what they say.
For Public Safety, Philip Banks, was once the NYPD's highest-ranking uniformed officer.
Philip Banks, that's interesting. Philip Banks was also on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, just so you're clear, in that mini White House that the 1990s had put on televised with the Will Smith guy that slapped Chris Rock on the Academy. Philip Banks was the father of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Again, these are really, these urban, digs are really tied into, other more insidious, stuff. I mean, again, I don't know why I have to document this for my children and myself on, such a platform of 9 3/4, but here I am.
Until he resigned in 2014 and was later named an unindicted co-conspirator in a police corruption case. Is that the kind of person you really want to have in your inner circle?
We're in a city of perfectly imperfect people. During the time that we have law enforcement crises, Phil brings a lot to the table.
There was testimony that he let a businessman pay for his vacation travel and expenses. You said you're not going to tolerate wrongdoing by your officers. Are the things he did okay?
Listen, he could have...
So the police department in New York City offers a salary position. It's a salary position. So I heard some woman by the name of Tina Brown mention about one of her level of area managers not wanting to live within his allowance. Again, as a crossover reference, but on a completely different scale or system. I mean, she didn't seem like she was very tolerant or happy about the allowance being system of whatever. Again, I'm in an apple turnover situation, so this is a real problem on a whole nother set of scales and quantifiable possibilities. I don't know who cobbled it. I don't know if this is meandering or like a roast beef problem. I wouldn't have partaken in roast beef. I mean, I am pointing out the stated obvious concerns with my being here without access to at least a ISO standard of like Title IX, where I'm at. I mean, this person that was also born in 1978, Maria, she has some job with Computer Associates, and she's able to buy really nice house, nice cars. She goes away all the time. I wasn't even allowed that level of lifestyle. I mean, in the same instance, and she looks more like him than she does me. So how does that work in keeping up with the Jones and the Jonases and so on and so forth?
Could have made better decisions of who was around him. What I do know is that we're going to have a very transparent government here in City Hall. Transparency is the best way to make sure those who are hired are doing their jobs.
How are you, Mr. Mayor?
The latest Marist poll shows Eric Adams' approval rating is.
It feels like the apple turnover with some cobbler doing dissecteurs work in the shoe department, was waiting for the other shoe to drop in. Oh, here it is. By the Osama bin Laden papers, that being the La Den, I just noticed, because California seems to be very different from the Northeast. And there was like a big West Coast, East Coast riff when I was younger. I mean, I didn't really follow along too well. I didn't know why it was important. I didn't know who was involved. But the cobbler inside of these Osama bin Laden paperworks talked about targeting our railway systems, and almost as if they were studying the Americans. He had access to a television also. I thought that was interesting. Except I'm now in it after those facts, and after I had somebody break in to the family estate of the White House, namely Obama. Now all of a sudden we've got Mayor Adams here and a whole lot of other, looks like cobbling going on in an attempt to apple turn over the city into something that is very concerning.
Is over 60%, but it's early still, and New Yorkers are not a particularly
And I found out that they called Osama bin Laden something called Pakistan.
patient lot.
How you, man?
Adams told us he studied the history of past mayors, so before we left, we asked him for his assessment of some of his famous predecessors whose portraits hang in City Hall.
I just want to try a quick, speed round, just
Yes.
asking you what words come up when I talk about some former mayors. David Dinkins.
Compassionate, caring, kind,
Michael Bloomberg.
thoughtful, kind, love the city.
Ed Koch.
Eric Adams, many personalities.
Really?
Love life.
You see your similarity with Ed Koch? a
Yes,
little bit.
thick skin.
Ed Koch used to go around asking, how am I doing? What do you say?
I just give a thumbs up. If they give me a thumbs up, I know I'm doing the right thing.
Okay.
If they use one of the other 4 fingers, then I got a problem.
Here we are, a civil rights group brought 13, which is a very sacred number somewhere in the, I'm not quite sure how I know that or where I know that from. Perhaps Arthur and the Round Table and Camelot is what they call it. So at this point, they show Mayor Eric Adams in a NYPD uniform. But he wasn't even on track to go there until some civil rights activist or group interloping within the city got him in.
I had to join the police force.
The Reverend Herbert Daughtry and a group of civil rights leaders brought 13 young men to the House of the Lord Church and stated that it was time for us to go into the police department and fight for reform inside.
What did you think?
Fight for reform. You mean a staged coup in succession? Why do they always make it seem like it's legally intolerable? They just throw it out there as though it's like, oh no, the Reverend said for the good Lord Church to put us there and fight for reform from the inside. Oh, so tearing down all of the rest of our safety from the inside where it's quiet, on record, and difficult for the rest of the public to even know about, since now you have a uniform on and it looks official.
You think when they said to you that you should join the police force?
I thought they were out of their minds.
Captain Eric Adams.
He spent 22 years on the force, rising to the rank of captain and emerging as a leading voice for reform within the department. After serving 7 years in the state senate and another 8 as Brooklyn Borough president,
It seems he's been serving a lot of time writing his own meal ticket, while the rest, I mean, I've been held captive. I've been taken to places without any family reps that I'm aware of. There's been a whole bunch of things that have happened in my time in New York. Not all that I can speak on. But yeah, there's a lot of this going on. It's really confusing who's allowing these things to progress rather than actually stepping in and helping the children that are being abused. And here's where President Obama and Mayor Adams' predecessor, this is one of a source that's out there in the universe somewhere. And this is a piece on 60 Minutes where they actually acknowledge that they've been studying America and its weaknesses.
Because he was on the run. It's still unknown exactly where he was hiding. But in 2004, he reconnects with Al-Qaeda in this letter, offering surviving members his new plan to attack America.
He's very eager to replicate the 9/11 attacks in the United States. You know, he is mindful that now the security conditions are very difficult at airports.
She read us part of this chilling letter from Osama bin Laden to the head of Al-Qaeda's International Terror Unit. Bin Laden writes that rather than hijack a plane, operatives should charter one for their next attack on the U.S. and adds if that's too difficult, they should target U.S. railways. Then bin Laden, who had a degree in civil engineering, explains exactly how to do it.
Civil engineering. It's an interesting stretch in a strange loop, like I showed a picture yesterday in artwork, whatever, between the closed loop and like almost the oval looking one, from a civil engineering to a social engineering project. So instead of hijacking airplanes, they just paid for them to bring their luggage and possessions over, and they just moved in?
He wanted to have 12 meters of steel rail removed so that this way the train could be derailed. And we find him explaining the simple toolkit that they could use. You know, he said here you could use a compressor, you could use smelting iron tools. He's in the...
Those are scary words on a whole nother level of PSI. Pounds per square inch of pressure used. This morning I can't even, I'm hobbling. Not cobbling, but I'm hobbling because the lower articulation of my knee joint has been cracked or hit with such area, I can't tell because I can't see whatever it is, but I can feel the manifestation of the pain because the PSI system, or the pressures per square inch, is not in atonement that is biologically and physiologically in tune with my persona and my ability to move freely through physics, space, time and space.
Those small details.
At the most granular level.
What does that say to you?
He's very methodical. Very methodical. He thinks he doesn't want to leave anything for chance.
Fortunately, he was never able to execute his plan because Lahoud says Al-Qaeda had been gutted by the war. She read us this letter from Tawfiq, a young associate who was running operations for Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and Pakistan. He's telling Osama bin Laden just how incapacitated the terror organization had become.
What I don't understand is why in New York City and why in Little Neck is there an Afghanistan flag flying? On whose authority? Who commissioned them? Who gave them permission? How does that work? Isn't it against some U.S. something or other to fly just some other country's flag? I mean, what does it take to open a consulate? What does it even mean?
The weakness, failure, and aimlessness that befell us were harrowing. We Muslims were defiled and desecrated.
Now, there was something with the Cleveland whatever Guardians playing baseball. Person looks like he's related to this guy, but more cleanly shaven. Apparently, my New York Bronx fan club of the Yankees were throwing whatever beer cans, is what I heard on the field. One of the morning announcers was very upset. But again, it's confusing. I see here, it says examining the Bin Laden papers is what the 60 Minutes has done. It shows them playing something that looks a little like baseball. I think they call it cricket. Different sport, but I don't follow it. I don't watch it. And then it goes from Osama bin Laden to Obama.
Gaining a rare glimpse into the inner sanctum of Al-Qaeda through the Bin Laden papers. This is the bustling city of Abbottabad, Pakistan. From overhead, you can still see the scar in the landscape. This vacant lot, where boys now play cricket, is where Osama bin Laden's home once stood, and where the world's most wanted terrorists hid until the evening of May 1st, 2011.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden.
Says the man who broke into the White House and the family estate and didn't leave in fact, he actually ran for a second term.
The operation, called Neptune's Spear, took 30 minutes. But then one SEAL alerted command that they'd found a ton of computers and electronics and needed more time. The SEALs were granted 10 more minutes that stretched into 18. They grabbed computers, VHS tapes, books, thumb drives, hard drives, and notebooks, carrying them out in bags strung around their neck.
That's what they're explaining. And here's part of the 60-minute interview.
We prevent something like that from ever happening again. And you can be sure, Americans can be sure, the FBI is fiercely determined to do our part with the other agencies to make sure that that never happens again.
One of the things you learned
That would be really nice if
was that these militia groups can organize and mobilize.
And that's part of a broader phenomenon that we've seen over the last couple of years of a variety of anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremists. But a lot of the domestic terror.
But I wonder, now that this FBI thing has gotten out of its beginning stages, and it seems to have opened its employment roster to whatever's just laying around, because it doesn't, it didn't, whatever, offer employment for myself, but it's just interesting. In this area, who are they employing and listening to when I wasn't even offered a position, even though I was available? And leading into this break-in in the White House and all these other really horrific things.
Terrorist threat that we face is not from well-organized, structured, traditional groups. In many ways, the hardest, biggest threat, terrorist threat, that Americans face here in the homeland is from what are essentially lone actors or people conspiring with one or two other people. And
Are they? Or is it more your hyper-clustered focus groups that hide under some agency umbrella and plan and plot and try to do, I don't know, civil and social engineering with their contact lists and their professionalism that they've obtained somehow in making these mini idol groups?
and using crude attack methods, a gun, a knife, a car. So if you think about the expression that a lot of Americans have heard about connecting the dots, for the kind of attack I'm describing, there are not a lot of dots to connect.
Ray works to connect the dots from headquarters with a $10 billion annual budget, 56 U.S. field offices, and more than 90 offices abroad.
It's a pretty big budget. Again, my U.S. Title IX's been violated. I don't know what I have to do in order to try to rectify that or where I even go.
For intelligence, does anything worry you more than Russia?
The biggest threat we face as a country from a counterintelligence perspective is from the People's Republic of China, and especially the Chinese Communist Party.
Now, is that because someone, while this break-in by one set of government operatives, other outside government operatives, were planning on breaking into our election system and going into the White House, hypothetically, someone else was at the port making some kind of deal with some 5-letter glyph that then made some kind of really dangerous electronics and integrated phone systems and computer systems with all of these already here problems from past civil outreach or outbreak problems that nobody was actively telling the white kids or their parents about how to protect oneself, where they should go to shelter in place. And sending all those kids to these facilities and these colleges like MIT and like technical schools. Now they're entering the Air Force, but we don't know how to make entry ourselves to the Air Force. But they are going into some kind of U.S. Air Force system. That's really frightening. That they're now turning over and cobbling some existential coup, along with what's already manifested in the Washington, D.C. area.
They are targeting our innovation, our trade secrets, our intellectual property on a scale that's unprecedented in history. They have a bigger hacking program than that of every other major nation combined. They have stolen more of Americans' personal and corporate data than every nation combined. It affects everything from agriculture to aviation to high tech to healthcare, pretty much every sector of our economy. Anything that makes an industry tick, they target. What is he?
That would be why for many, many moons, when a moon existed, because right now the moon is no longer hung in the sky, where my whatever is going on, it got knocked out again yesterday. The meteorologist, by the way, did say that the planets were in line, all of them, with a crescent moon. And when I went out last night, there was no moon to be found, and I made document of it.
What is the FBI doing about that?
We are now moving at a pace where we're opening a new China counterintelligence investigation about every 12 hours. There's well north of 2,000 of these investigations. All 56 of our field offices are engaged on it. And I can assure you that it's not because our agents don't have enough else to do. It's a measure of how significant the threat is.
How do we stay safe? I'm in the Big Apple, the Empire State, the state of New York. I have other issues other than just China currently going on in my, just outside of my POV, but in my bubble, in the bottle. It's in the bottle. I'm a bubble in the bottle. It's frightening because there's nobody over 6 foot to look up to say, what should I be doing and how should I be participating?
Christopher Wray is not quite halfway through his 10-year term. That means by...
But at the same time, there are other people on the employ that get paid salary, health benefits. They have chains of command, protocols, they get training. And then there's, I don't know what. So that was 60 Minutes, which is CBS, 7 p.m. on April 24th, 2022. It's a director of the FBI and examining the Bin Laden papers. Where's the... It's this one. Season 54, episode 32. And then if I go to the Eyewitness News, I have to find the same night. I have to find where he said the planets had aligned. Okay, this is the meteorologist. He calls it a parade of planets.
But that will not stop our numbers from getting up to about 60. And while we have mainly clear skies, say an hour before sunrise tomorrow, look off to the southeast sky. We have a pretty cool thing up.
So it's Jupiter, Venus, they said it's a crescent moon, Mars, Saturn, 1 hour before 5 a.m. And it says through midweek. Except for me, the moon is not there. The moon just disappeared. So I don't know how that affects.
A parade of planets here, all the planets in alignment, Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Saturn. You sprinkle in the crescent moon there for good measure as well. And this will really be right through the middle part of the week, but tomorrow morning's our best shot again, right before...
So I'm in this rectangular pattern. And that's what they have on the buildings in the area. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.